Hey kids, it's Jurassic James with Jurassic Plains looking at Piatnitzkysaurus. So I know if you go to Dinosaur Park online and buy this, or Kroger's or Walmart, you'll see this guy here. And what is it? It is a South American megalosaur. It was discovered, the first remains were discovered in 1977. It was described in 1979 by Jose Bonaparte, which is he's a big deal in paleontology in the South. And there was more fossils dug up in 82 and 83. So there are no other models of this. It's a very obscure species, so with the official list of Jurassic James, we will release Piatnitzkysaurus. Oh, fun name. The name is after a Russian geologist who lived in Argentina, actually, so it's named in honor of him. So usually the names are Latin or Greek, unless they're from China, And so if the name seems really unusual, you're not really sure, it's probably a human name, it's been named after something. But no, in paleontology, you're not supposed, or any science, you're not supposed to name an animal after yourself. So I cannot name Jurassic James. You can name after a friend in honor of somebody, but you can't name after yourself. Well, you can technically, but it's really frowned upon. So looking at the animal itself, I will say with the, it's the standard issue stuff. It has 4 toes, 3 on the ground, 1 little dew claw, 4 limbs. They are close together. The thing that sticks out to me the most is this skull. The weird thing is that they only found 2 skeletons, and that part was not what they found. So, but the reconstructions do show it having some kind of little bump there. It's kind of like an Allosaurus, but smaller, which implies some larger structure going off of that, but it's entirely unknown. As far as size goes, this guy's about 14 feet long, and it's about 5 foot, if you were roughly. Do you know in paleontology, we study animals, we measure them at the hip as far as height, and usually it's just in length. But, it's probably, if I were standing, I'm 5'10", it's probably about that tall to me if I were standing up. And so, one thing to point out is the bones, the one they found was the skull bones weren't fused together. And do you know if that's a sign that the animals are not fully mature, they haven't grown up entirely? So that 14-foot size range could just be like a juvenile or a teenager. So again, it could be bigger. So you might see some actual write-ups saying, oh, it's bigger than that, but that's why. We don't have the bones of the full-size one, so we're saying, yeah, at least this big, right? So, what is it? I say it's the unfortunate thing, this is unfortunate, that no other animal from its environment has toys. I mean, the fact that it has a toy is a big deal. And so this is found in Argentina, South America, in the about 164 million years ago. So it's like mid-Jurassic. So again, it's one of the most complete dinosaurs they found from that time, and one of the few with a skull, actually, a skull fragments. They didn't find the tail, they didn't find the feet or the hands, but again, we can assume 3 and 4, as I mentioned earlier. They found a lot of these bones here, and they found some skull bones, but not all of them. So again, it's really a big deal because it's in the megalosaur group. And megalosaurs were the first group of dinosaurs during Jurassic to really get bigger. Now again, 20 feet on average, but still that's bigger considering that before that it was like 15, 10, and so on. So to give you kind of overview, that's why I have all the other sauropods here, even where he fits in the family tree. Let's see. First of all, the megalosaur group. First and foremost, Megalosaurus is the first dinosaur ever named, and it was named before it was a dinosaur. And so the idea here is that this is a Megalosaurus model. Not my best one, I only have 2. But again, it's the first dinosaur named, so people just thought big lizards. Then they started finding more of them and going, oh, there are other families and groups, kind of like how we have bears and dogs and cats and all different groups. And so that's kind of the understanding that, oh, they're not all Megalosaurus, they're different groups. But Megalosaurus still is kind of historically, it's still kind of a big deal. So a lot of early dinosaurs we find, not early in time, but like we found them in 1800s and 1900s, they were thought to be Megalosaurus first, and they go, oh, actually there's something else, So in the Megalosaurus group, there's 2 types, the Megalosaur group. There's Megalosaurus itself, and the Afrovenators, which are Megalosaurus from Africa, and Southern Hemisphere usually. So there's 2 major branches of Megalosaur, and there's one guy made famous by walking dinosaurs called Eustriptospondylus, this guy here, and it has traits from both groups. So that's annoying. But in general, the Megalosaurs are considered the earliest sauropods in Tenturin. What is that? So the dinosaurs with like Coelophysis, Dilophosaurus, those little guys, those earlier guys, their tails have certain tendons in them. And so these are the first ones with that advancement, basically. And so again, I'm always looking back at these things like, oh, well, these guys back then had these features. But remember, at the time they were evolving in mid-Jurassic, they were pretty advanced. So the Megalosaurs, I'm going to put them right here. The next group we have are the Metriacanthosaurs. And that includes last week's video, Metriacanthosaurus here, and Yangyunsaurus, which is from China. And so these guys are kind of close to Metrisaurus, but they are closer to Allosaurus. Now, when I mentioned these family tree facts, example I gave before was how you know, you look at carnivore, we have bears, dogs, and cats. Well, bears are closer to dogs than they are to cats. So again, it's not that their features align more. And so the idea here is that they must have a shared, more closely common ancestor between bears and cats, bears and dogs, than they do to cats, right? So the Allosaurus is like the certain standard, right? And the Mechanthosaurus are a branch of that, or an earlier branch of that. The Megalosaurs are a different group entirely, right? Oh, also, next week's video, this guy, we will go over him. He's also considered one of the most basic of the Megalosaurs. It's a competition, a race to the most basal. And so that's the Megalosaurs. Here are the Allosaurs and Mechanthosaurs. And of course, the Allosaurs also have a connection with the Carcharodontosaurs. You know, when I was a kid, they were all in one giant group. And now I realize the South American, well, the early Cretaceous groups, not the Jurassic groups, are their own kind of thing. So Giganotosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, Africa and South America, these guys are essentially in the Allosaurus branch. The Spinosaurs, including Spinosaurus and Baryonyx and their relatives, these guys are actually closer to Megalosaurus. They're their own branch off. So they're not carnosaurs in the sense of they're not like this guy. And of course, Coelurosaurs are the Rexes, the Raptors, the Gallimimus. When you think of a feathered dinosaur, they usually are Coelurosaurs, at least. I mean, we think there's more feathered groups, of course, but the first feathered dinosaurs we kind of knew of in science are the Coelurosaurs. And most of them are very small, except for the Tyrannosaurs. Another group I want to mention just real quickly, because they're an offshoot. They're further away from these other groups. The Abelisaurs and Ceratosaurs. So the Abelisaur, I've been over many Abelisaur videos. So, you know, Carnotaurus and Scorpio of the nature of these bulldog southern animals with short, tiny arms, who we believe were descended or related to Ceratosaurus of the late Jurassic period. And so, again, we have the Abelisaurs and Ceratosaurus, the Coelurosaurs, what we consider historically carnosaurs, with the Carcharodontids, the Allosaurs, and the Mechanthosaurs. The Spinosaurs are closer to the Megalosaurs, and that's where our friend Piatnitzkysaurus sits, again, in the Megalosaurus group. Why am I teaching you all this? I don't know. Are you interested in it? Please tell me in the comments and like and subscribe and all the things. Because I'm just telling you, when you look up these animals, here's what we know about it. And the big focus is its environment, which I have other toys of. Well, there are no other toys of. And two, the who they're related to. So it is an important animal in its own right, but it is such a basic animal in this grouping. So it's like, wow, this guy we see is the most primitive of a certain group. We're close to it with that, right? I forgot to mention the DNA code they all have. I don't remember if there was nothing in the paper or the write-up or the images that show a heightened neurospines. So that's entirely toy design. These dangly bits here, who knows? This part here, who knows? The crest again. It makes when you first look at it, it reminds you of Eugangosaurus right here, but they are not, because this alleged crest is over this part here, and this guy's almost over the eyebrows, eye ridge. So again, Piatnitzkysaurus, interesting animal, could be bigger than what it really is. One of its contemporaries would have been early Titanosaurs, early Diplodocids. There's one called Eobellosaurus, so think the Abelisaurus, but Dawn, Eo, a little earlier, a little smaller. And again, this guy's 14 feet long, about a little under 1,000 pounds, but that animal is, we believe, a juvenile, so it could be a lot bigger. That being said, we are wrapping up this guy, kind of a small, short video. Again, I think it's weird that they're showing off so many obscure dinosaurs. I don't hate it, but I do wish they had their body forms more realistic. Anyway, so next week we're doing this guy from China. He's actually a close relative of Piatnitzkysaurus, which is ironic that they came out together at the same time. You see the family trees of the theropods, they're usually close together. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you next week, and we're going over this guy.